The crystalline spires of Nexus Prime had stood for 3,000 years, piercing the aurora-painted atmosphere like frozen lightning. From his observation deck in the Triumvirate Council chambers, Chancellor Vextar watched the eternal dance of the three moons, their gravitational ballet casting shifting shadows across the neutral world's surface. Today, those shadows seemed darker somehow. Chancellor, the voice of his aide, a nervous Kytherian with chromatophore patches flickering anxiety yellow, interrupted his contemplation. "We're receiving unusual readings from the deep space monitors." Vextar's four eyes narrowed, each pair focusing independently, a evolutionary advantage that had served his species well in their rise to galactic prominence. "Define unusual, Keeper Zilneth." "Quantum distortions, sir." "Massive ones." "The gravimetric sensors are screaming." Zilnetha's patches shifted to deep crimson. "The readings are off the scale. Whatever's causing this is bigger than anything in our databases." Before Vextar could respond, every communication array on Nexus Prime erupted in cacophonous alarm. Emergency frequencies blazed to life as panic transmissions flooded in from across the outer rim. "This is Freight Command 77 Alpha. Something just translated out of quantum space near the Helix Nebula. Gods preserve us, it's massive. Triton defense grid to all stations, unknown contact, classification impossible. Spectral analysis suggests, no, that can't be right. The hull composition matches nothing in our archives. Mayday, mayday. Commercial vessel Bright Fortune requesting immediate evacuation protocols. Unknown vessel has appeared in system. Repeat, unknown vessel of impossible scale has." The transmission cut to static. Vextar's throat sacs inflated with barely controlled dread. In his 2 centuries of service to the Triumvirate, he had overseen the peaceful integration of 17 species, mediated 4 major wars, and maintained the delicate balance that kept the galaxy's 3 great powers from tearing each other apart. He had never heard such naked terror in a spacer's voice. "Bring up the tactical display," he commanded, his voice carrying the harmonic undertones that made his species natural diplomats. Full spectrum analysis. The chamber's holographic array materialized, showing the vast web of trade routes, military positions, and political boundaries that define civilized space. At the edge of the display, near the abandoned sectors that bordered the mysterious void reaches, a single crimson dot pulsed like a malevolent star. "Visual confirmation incoming," announced the chamber's AI, its voice oddly strained. "Warning, spectral analysis indicates technologies inconsistent with known paradigms. Recommend immediate escalation to Triumvirate High Command." The hologram shifted, zooming toward the contact. What materialized in the chamber's center made Vextar's blood freeze in his veins. It was a ship, if something so impossibly vast could be called merely a ship. The vessel stretched nearly 20 kilometers from stem to stern, its hull a matte black that seemed to devour light itself. Scarred armor plating told stories of battles fought in the dark between stars, while weapon emplacements clustered along its flanks like the spines of some primordial predator. At its prow, barely visible against the cosmic backdrop, ancient symbols were etched deep into the metal. Symbols Vextar recognized with mounting horror. "No," he whispered, his translator struggling with the harmonic complexity of his native tongue. "It cannot be. They were destroyed. We made certain they were destroyed." But even as denial filled his minds, the terrible truth blazed across the tactical display. Those symbols, worn by eons of war and travel, were unmistakable. Sol System. Terra. Earth. The humans had returned. Across the galaxy, on 1,000 worlds and 10,000 space stations, the same realization was dawning. In the war colleges of the militant hegemony, ancient texts were being pulled from classified archives, texts that spoke of the species that had once brought 3 galactic powers to their knees. In the merchant guilds of the collaborative, trading algorithms were being frantically updated to account for the return of the galaxy's most feared warriors. In the deepest vaults of the Triumvirate, weapons that had been locked away for centuries were being readied once more. The humans were supposed to be a myth. A cautionary tale told to young officers about the dangers of underestimating a species based on their biology alone. The terrifying legends of Soul's children, who fought with a viciousness that defied rational explanation, who turned every battle into a crucible of innovation, who never, ever, yielded. 300 years ago, after the last great war had nearly shattered galactic civilization, the human homeworld had simply vanished. Their entire star system had been engulfed in an artificial quantum storm, cutting them off from the rest of the galaxy. Most assumed they had destroyed themselves in some final, apocalyptic experiment. Others whispered that they had transcended physical existence entirely, becoming beings of pure thought and energy. None had imagined they were simply waiting. On Nexus Prime, emergency sessions were being called. Fleet commanders were reviewing defense protocols that hadn't been updated in generations. Diplomats were trying to remember negotiation techniques specifically designed for dealing with human psychology. Techniques that most had dismissed as relics of a darker age. The ESS Leviathan, for that was the name emblazoned in those ancient symbols, continued its inexorable advance toward the galaxy's heart. It made no aggressive moves, fired no weapons, issued no demands. It simply was, a dark monument to humanity's endurance cutting through space like a knife through silk. Then, as every sensor array in 3 sectors focused on the approaching dreadnought, the silence was broken. On every frequency, in every language, broadcast with a clarity that suggested technology far beyond anything the current galactic powers possessed, came a message. 3 words. Simple. Terrifying. Final. We've returned. The galaxy held its breath. In council chambers and military headquarters, in trading posts and deep space monitoring stations, billions of beings waited for what would come next. The humans were back, and with them came the memory of wars that had reshaped the very nature of interstellar conflict. In the deepest parts of their genetic memory, every species in the galaxy remembered the same terrible truth: when humanity went to war, the universe itself bent to accommodate their fury. And now, after 3 centuries of silence, they had something to say. Admiral Kiera Thorne stood on the bridge of the Leviathan, her weathered hands clasped behind her back as she studied the holographic display showing the galaxy's current political structure. At 67, she bore the scars of humanity's long exile, a cybernetic eye that glowed with soft blue light, prosthetic fingers on her left hand that moved with mechanical precision, and a network of neural implants that connected her directly to the ship's quantum intelligence. Analysis complete, Admiral, reported Commander Chen Rodriguez, the ship's chief tactical officer. His own augmentations were more subtle, threads of silver beneath his dark skin that pulsed with data streams. 3 major powers, just as our long-range reconnaissance suggested. The Triumvirate maintains control of the core worlds, the Hegemony dominates the outer rim through military force, and the Collaborative controls most interstellar commerce. Same old game, Thorne murmured, her voice carrying the weight of centuries of human experience. Different players. Dr. Sarah Okafor, the expedition's chief xenolinguist and diplomatic advisor, approached with a datapad displaying intercepted communications. Her own modifications were less visible but no less significant, enhanced neural pathways that allowed her to process and understand alien languages in real time, and emotional regulators that helped her navigate the complex psychology of non-human species. Admiral, we're receiving thousands of transmissions. Panic, mostly. But also, recognition. They remember us. Thorne's scarred face broke into a grim smile. Good. Fear is a language every species understands. The bridge of the Leviathan was a testament to humanity's evolution during their exile. Quantum processors hummed with calculations that bent the laws of physics, while AI consciousnesses that had been born in the depths of Earth's quantum storms monitored every system with inhuman precision. The crew moved with the fluid efficiency of beings who had spent generations preparing for this moment. Prometheus, show them what we've become, Thorne commanded. The ship's primary AI, named for the mythological figure who had given fire to humanity, materialized as a shifting constellation of light. Initiating full spectrum revelation, Admiral. All fleets are standing by. Across a dozen star systems, space itself began to ripple. What had appeared to be empty void suddenly revealed itself to be anything but. Humanity's exile fleet decloaked, not just the Leviathan, but hundreds of vessels of impossible design. Stealth cruisers that existed partially outside normal spacetime, carrier ships that birthed swarms of self-replicating fighters, and siege platforms that could crack moons with focused gravity waves. The galaxy's sensors screamed as energy signatures beyond their comprehension flooded their instruments. Technologies that shouldn't exist according to known physics displayed themselves with casual arrogance. Humanity hadn't just survived their exile, they had evolved beyond the galaxy's ability to comprehend. Dr. Okafor, Thorne said quietly, open a channel to the Triumvirate. It's time they understood why we've returned. In the emergency session chamber on Nexus Prime, Chancellor Vextar stood before the hastily assembled representatives of the galaxy's three great powers. Hegemony War Marshal Krekstoff, his chitinous armor bearing the scars of 100 battles, leaned forward with predatory interest. Collaborative Trade-Mind Lyrian, her crystalline form refracting the chamber's light into prismatic patterns, pulsed with barely contained anxiety. The situation is unprecedented, Vextar began, his harmonics carefully modulated to project calm authority. Humanity's return changes everything. Our predecessors made the mistake of underestimating them once. We cannot. The chamber's communication array activated without authorization, filling the space with a projection of Admiral Thorne. Her image was crisp, detailed, and carried with it an aura of absolute confidence that made seasoned warriors shift uncomfortably. Greetings, she said, her voice carrying clearly despite the millions of kilometers between them. I am Admiral Kiera Thorne of the Earth Colonial Defense Force. I speak for humanity. War Marshal Krekstoff's mandibles clicked aggressively. Human, you dare. I dare much more than you imagine, Marshal. Thorne's cybernetic eye focused on him with mechanical precision. Your species conquered the hegemony through superior military doctrine. Admirable. But your doctrine is 3 centuries out of date. The projection expanded, showing tactical displays of the hegemony's most advanced battle fleets. With clinical precision, the display highlighted every weakness, every blind spot, every strategic vulnerability. It was an analysis so thorough that even Krekstoff's battle-hardened composure cracked. You've been watching us, Trade-Mind Lyrian accused, her crystalline structure flickering with rapid calculations. Spying. Preparing. For 300 years, Thorne confirmed. Did you think we simply disappeared? We've been evolving, Lyrian. Learning. Adapting. While your collaborative grew fat on trade monopolies, we were redesigning the fundamental nature of warfare itself. Chancellor Vextar stepped forward, his diplomatic training finally asserting itself. Admiral Thorne, surely we can discuss this rationally. Humanity was ejected from galactic society for good reason. The wars. The wars where 3 galactic powers united against 1 star system and still nearly lost. Thorne's smile was cold. The wars where humanity, outnumbered 1,000,000 to 1, held you off for 70 years. Those wars, Chancellor. The chamber fell silent. The terrible mathematics of those ancient conflicts spoke for themselves. But we're not here for revenge, Thorne continued, and something in her tone made every being in the chamber focus completely. We're here because the galaxy is stagnating. 3 powers locked in eternal balance, innovation dying, exploration abandoned. You've created a universe of mediocrity. And what would you have us do? Vextar asked, though he suspected he already knew the answer. Evolve, Thorne said simply. Accept a new paradigm. Humanity claims no territory, seeks no resources, desires no tribute. But we will no longer tolerate a galaxy that has forgotten how to dream. The tactical display shifted, showing the galaxy's current borders. Then, with deliberate precision, it began highlighting systems that had been quarantined, explored regions that had been abandoned, entire sectors that had been written off as too dangerous or difficult to exploit. "These are humanity's new territories," Thorne announced. "The places you feared to go. The challenges you deemed impossible. We will settle the worlds you couldn't tame, explore the phenomena you couldn't understand, and push the boundaries you were afraid to cross. And if we refuse to recognize your claims?" War Marshal Krekstoth growled. The display changed once more, showing a minor asteroid belt in an uninhabited system. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, with casual precision, one of humanity's fleet elements fired a single weapon. The asteroid simply ceased. Not destroyed, not scattered. They ceased to exist entirely, their matter converted to pure energy that dissipated harmlessly into space. "Then you'll learn what we learned during our exile," Thorne said quietly. "That survival requires the courage to become something more than what you were." The silence stretched for long moments. Finally, Chancellor Vextar spoke, his harmonic voice carefully neutral. "You offer us a choice between cooperation and annihilation." "I offer you a choice between stagnation and evolution," Thorne corrected. "The galaxy is vast, and there's room for all of us, if you're willing to grow." Trade-mined Lyrian's crystalline structure pulsed with rapid calculations. "The economic implications alone will be managed," Thorne interrupted. "Humanity has no interest in disrupting stable trade networks. We simply demand the right to exist, to explore, and to push the boundaries of what's possible." War Marshal Krekstoth leaned back, his warrior's instincts finally accepting what his pride had refused to acknowledge. "And if we agree to this paradigm, then the galaxy enters a new age," Thorne said. "One where the impossible becomes merely difficult, and the difficult becomes routine. Where 3 centuries of human innovation becomes available to any species brave enough to embrace change." The projection flickered, showing glimpses of technologies that defied understanding, medical techniques that could restore dying worlds, energy systems that could power civilizations, exploration methods that could map the universe itself. "Choose wisely," Admiral Thorne said as her image began to fade. "Humanity has waited 3 centuries to return. We won't wait much longer for your answer." As the transmission ended, the 3 galactic powers stared at each other across the chamber. Each understood that the old order was ending, whether they willed it or not. The only question was whether they would help shape what came next, or be swept aside by forces beyond their comprehension. In the depths of space, the Leviathan waited with infinite patience. Humanity had learned much during their exile, but perhaps the most important lesson was this: the universe belonged to those bold enough to claim it. The galaxy's answer would determine not just the future of interstellar politics, but the very nature of civilization itself. And deep in their hearts, every species knew that when humanity asked a question, the universe itself held its breath for the response. The age of comfortable mediocrity was ending. The age of impossible dreams was about to begin. 72 hours. That's how long it took for the galaxy to fracture. Admiral Thorne watched the tactical display as emergency fleets mobilized across 36 systems. The Hegemony's war drums beat their ancient rhythms. The Collaborative's trade networks buzzed with panicked calculations. The Triumvirate's diplomats worked frantically to forge a unified response. But unity was a luxury the galaxy could no longer afford. "Prometheus," Thorne said quietly, "show me the dissidents." The AI's projection shifted, highlighting dozens of smaller powers, independent worlds, and forgotten colonies that had chafed under the 3-power monopoly for centuries. Already, 17 systems had broadcast acceptance of humanity's terms. The promise of forbidden technologies and unexplored frontiers was too tempting to resist. "War Marshal Krekstoth has issued a challenge," Commander Rodriguez reported. "Single combat. Winner takes all." Thorne's laugh was sharp as broken glass. "Still thinking like primitives." She turned to the communication array. "Open a channel to the Hegemony flagship." Krekstotha's scarred visage appeared, mandibles clicking with barely contained fury. "Human. You will face me in. Marshal, Thorne interrupted, look up. Confusion flickered across the alien warrior's features. Then his compound eyes widened in horror as his sensors registered what hung in the void above his fleet, a single human fighter craft, no larger than a shuttlecraft, its hull shimmering with impossible energies. That pilot volunteered for a demonstration, Thorne said conversationally. She's 16 years old. A child by human standards. The fighter moved. Not through space, but around it, folding reality like origami. In the span of a heartbeat, it was simultaneously above, below, and through the Hegemony's flagship. Quantum torpedoes materialized inside the ship's shields, detonating with surgical precision. When the light faded, Krextotha's mighty dreadnought hung powerless in space, engines dead, weapons offline, but crew unharmed. Single combat is for species that haven't transcended the need for fair fights, Thorne continued. Choose evolution, Marshal. Or choose irrelevance. The transmission ended. Across the galaxy, the message was clear: resistance was not futile, it was simply pointless. Within a week, 47 systems had joined humanity's new paradigm. Within a month, the number had tripled. The old order didn't collapse, it simply became obsolete, like a wooden sword in an age of plasma rifles. And in the deep void between galaxies, humanity's real fleet began its journey home. The Leviathan had been just the messenger. The universe was about to discover what 3 centuries of human ambition could accomplish when unleashed upon the infinite dark.